Do you ever hear?
There's a total disconnect now between the ruling group and the masses.
I hate psychology.
Clear out.
They're the same worm-like characters.
Analysts.
Fuck you with your stupid argument.
They should not bother us.
Democracy. All of this just works.
Vote for the generations who are coming.
Fully dynamic game engine.
A millennial video essayist.
Always support strength,
Constant craving.
and identity.
I haven't yearned. They are a disease of our time.
Clear them out. You're voting for what your grandfather and father fought for.
I sit and hear.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. I believe I said it last week or a couple of weeks ago when we did our weekly show that this intro never fails to sort of pump me up, no matter how my day is going or how I'm feeling about doing the stream. I always get pumped up listening to this. Bloody Path, welcome back. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, same here. So I'm pumped up, partially caffeinated, and I'm ready to go. We have some
nice.
Interesting topics in the tank here. We're going to do like they have to look at the Nazi Tradwife coverage, and something else.
We're not even 2 minutes in, and we're already dropping N words. You gotta be careful.
Okay, we're damn. Okay, the Tradwife, we'll just call it that, the Norwegian Tradwife discourse that's gotten a little bit on the weird side. I mean, we had originally scheduled something else, but our friend Hans-Jørgen Lysglimt, who's like the head of the party Alternative for Norway, is doing his court case currently, and he's putting out video, like he's filmed himself doing his defense, and he's putting out like related content. So that, yeah.
Was it his defense or just his appeal?
Well, yeah, I think that was his appeal. Maybe I'm mixing the terminology here,
right?
From a legalistic standpoint, but at least he
might have a lawyer. Is all I'm saying, right?
He has two lawyers that are really good, and he should have just used those. But regrettably, he decided to spend 90 minutes making his own appeal for both of these cases.
The
he's
prosecutor of being a Freemason.
Yeah, pretty much everything under the sun. We could link to it later and just take a look at some of the strategies that he's been trying to put forward. So that's pretty interesting. Yep.
Before we get going here, I want to remind anyone listening or watching that haven't seen it. A friend of the channel, Nordhuger, has made his very first feature-length documentary, which includes me as one of the talking heads. Although you don't see my head, sadly. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to put that in the chat on the right on YouTube. All right. So, do we want to start with Tradwives?
I think that's a good starter. Yeah.
Okay. So we have collected. I've sort of read this past week and a half. I probably read like 5 opinion pieces on Tradwives from a lot of different women. So I'm getting a bit messed up on which is which. Which article would you like to start with? Is it Tradwife Fever or the Soft Girls?
Well, the Tradwife Fever stuff, because that's how I got hooked into it from my channels on Twitter. This is the guy like Lasse Josefsen, who he was in that documentary Sons of the North as well. So yeah, he is like a resident right-wing expert, right? I follow him on Twitter. Just don't tell him, basically, because he does keep a sort of close watch on a lot of characters.
Recovering Chud.
By tracking them, essentially. So I mean, I try to just quietly just pay attention to what he's doing, because it is interesting. He does seem to have kind of a decent grip. You have a lot of these experts, quote unquote, on the right wing, and they post opinion pieces and think pieces, and it's always cringe. They just never have any clue about how to actually articulate it. But I mean, he comes from some sort of punk rock background, and then he went into be like a sort of humanist. So he's like this kind of centrist liberal type, where he tries to. Sometimes he will talk about like far left developments as well. And he's certainly not a friend in any conventional sense, but he's able to at least articulate, in my opinion, something that seems like a cohesive case. It's not just browbeating like you get with a lot of these types.
I believe he's been part of different sort of online spheres, so to speak, to the point where he knows what he's talking about, at least, right?
Yeah, we could sit and argue over this minutia. We talked about like the origins of accelerationism, or they actually came from Nick Land and not something else, but it's like it's smaller points. I do really think he sort of gets the general categorizations or the sort of spheres of what's actually moving in on the far right, both internationally and locally here as well.
Now, I don't know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it wasn't anything important. Just go on.
Okay. Well, I wasn't going to say anything important, certainly, as well.
Stalemate.
It's a bit of a stalemate, yes. No, my brain just went in a completely different direction, and I'm not sure. It's a bit early in the show. The numbers are still climbing in terms of the audience. I don't know if we have this power, but I called him a recovering chud, but my mind flipped that to Chud Hunter, and now I really want to see like a Wojak edit of the Deer Hunter, like the movie poster when he's pointing his gun at his head.
Work.
If I have the power to make someone do this,
get to work, guys.
Yeah. All right. Do you want me to just start reading this?
Yeah, let's go.
Very good. Tradwife, in air quotes, fever is raging. I call it housework fascism. And here he has a photo of, what does he have a photo of? Oh, it's a Shutterstock photo, which he has pasted a lot of headlines over, and it says, you know, warning about Tradwife trend. Women need to not give a shit. Blah blah blah. A lot of debates about this. To discuss Tradwives only as choosing to be a housewife is completely wrong. So this is in the context of a debate that's been going on in Norwegian papers for about 2 weeks. I said between various commentators, mostly women, which makes sense. Some politicians, etc., etc. Some women are against, some women are for the sort of growing Tradwife trend. On a personal note, I think the Tradwife trend, as in the context of TikTok, is something weird and grotesque and not very sort of real. Although, if we can use that as a jumping off point for a wider sort of societal conversation about actually how are the women doing in modern society, I'm all for it. So, the word Tradwife has been circulating in the Norwegian media recently. I will not go into the various posts, but some have been good and some have been damn bad, and some have been damned stingy, which I think that a word, well, strange, very strange. But as the posts have ticked in, and I think what it means is that as the sort of the opinion pieces have ticked in, I've become more and more confused. Are people actually talking about, quote, Tradwives, or are they talking about any women who decide to be stay-at-home moms? There are quite significant differences here. I am mostly referring to the recent Norwegian debate, but the problem is international. People are either discussing regular women who want to stay at home with their kids, or they're discussing newer influencers who are doing some sort of Mad Men role-playing game, which is what I was referring to. They do not discuss the ultra-reactionary and often fascist actors that large parts of the, quote, Tradwife culture largely consist of. What is the Tradwife culture, Lennikpath? Do you know? Because I have no idea what the Tradwife culture is.
Well, I only think he's talking about these TikTok influencers, right? And the takes that he's getting to here, without spoiling the article, is sort of there's kind of two types. When you get like, if you're an actual Tradwife IRL, nobody's heard of you, right? You're not on TikTok.
Yeah, no, that's true, right?
This is where I agree with this guy as well. I mean, I maybe not on the finer points, but just in the general analysis. there's no actual Christian conservative stay-at-home mother who's going to be posting TikToks about her life trying to get 10 million 10 million followers.
Yeah.
Generally,
Posting
you're
her-
just
her
you might
boobs on
see
social
her on
media.
in the store or something, or in the library, but like if you look at the actual characters who appear in this space, whether it's on TikTok or some kind of other social media where they're promoting themselves, it ends up being that either it's some kind of route to an OnlyFans account, or as this guy's talking about, it's some type of reactionary influencer, which does also happen. He mentioned some examples of this, right?
Yes.
But I mean, he's not wrong in just as a kind of an objective observation as to what that is. I don't think he's incorrect. He's sort of, okay, well, this is, oh, you should stay away from it because of that. But yeah, it's not wrong. So maybe you could just read on and see.
Yeah, we can get on. I
some of the
would say
examples
that
that he
I
comes up
would agree that maybe his analysis is correct, but that doesn't mean that the conversation should be shut down. Anyway, coincidentally, there is a Tradwife fever in Sweden as well. Swedish Daily Mail produced a series of reports on the phenomenon, including a major interview with a, quote, Tradwife influencer who fills Instagram and TikTok with good advice on cooking, gardening, and organic living. I just need to check out who is this woman? He doesn't seem to be very... Okay, he links to some stuff, but he's not showing me who that actually is. There was just one huge problem. The young woman has a background in the neo-Nazi organizations, the Nordic Resistance Movement and Nordic Strength. Swedish Daily Mail had to remove the interview from their website within a few hours. On a very quick review.
So, just as a quick break here, if I'm not wrong, it's been in the news lately that the Nordic Resistance Movement has been labeled as a terrorist organization by the United States government. I think maybe the chat can correct me. I think that was what happened, which is interesting because in Sweden, where they're located, they're not considered a terrorist movement. But there's basically been some push from the Israeli lobby to just kind of find all of these types of organizations,
Yeah.
particularly if they're very supportive of Palestine, as well as being right wing, is just label them right wing. No, sorry, to label them as terrorists. Just on that ground, it's very interesting, but at least I think that clears the Fed charge from them, right?
Fair
because
enough, yeah.
the typical thing, because we've seen these movements with these marches and stuff, like they're they have the, what do you call it, like the stick with the three. It's not the victory symbol, but like the kind of 3-line.
Oh yeah,
Nordic rune symbol, the green and the black. I think that's who they are. Maybe
I know what you're talking
quickly.
about. It's on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, I forgot it. Sorry.
So yeah, I'm looking at them now. Okay, no, they actually have the pointing logo. It's like an arrow pointing upwards.
Oh, really? Oh, it's those guys. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was correct in that. Maybe you could I can share a photo or something from Google search.
Well, it's not necessarily relevant in that sense. It's one of these movements, right?
One of the typical ones that people just accuse of being feds by virtue of existing, like Patriot Front or something like that, which of course they might still have operatives from the Swedish intelligence community inside. We can't exclude that. That's probably quite likely. But yeah, they don't have the terrorist label in Sweden, so that's very interesting. At least they're anti the something occupied government. I thought that was an interesting footnote. You could keep reading.
On a quick review of her account on Instagram, I found hashtags referring to, quote, Revolt Against the Modern World, a book by the Italian philosopher and self-proclaimed super fascist Giulia Savola. I also found talk of breaking with, quote, this degenerate society, a clear reference to David Lane's, quote, 14 words, which is a kind of creed for neo-Nazis. This influencer is not only eco-conscious, she is an eco-fascist, which is a strong current in fascism nowadays. Now, I'm going to have to take a moment here, as someone who's also referred to Revolt Against the Modern World by Giulia Savola, that the author of this article, some of the things I've had sort of misgivings about him before is that he tends to break down in the in the details. And I understand that to a lot of people, putting Julie Zavala next to David Lane makes sense, but for someone who's sort of read his works, it becomes a bit silly. Zavala writes, I'd say, on a bit of a higher level.
Yeah, I agree absolutely, but I think a lot of people in these movements tend to mix those two people up, and they don't have a very sophisticated analysis of Evola in general.
Sure,
like they like the slogans. You know,
and from anyone on the outside, it's the same thing, right? So
yep.
That the newspaper managed to make a fool of itself is not really a surprise. This discourse around Tradwives have been muddled beyond repair for a couple of years. It seems to have started around 2020 when the press started interviewing Elena Petit as an representative of Tradwives. Who is Elena Petit? Let me just Google her. A woman, I guess. She apparently has a YouTube channel. The Darling Academy. British Petit runs the website The Darling Academy. Here it is concerned with old-fashioned style, etiquette, and has published books on good manners and traditional lifestyles. She and the man have also come to the conclusion that they should have so-called traditional marriages. Journalists assumed that she was a grand old lady within the Tradwife movement. But until then, the relatively ordinary conservative Petit had not really used the term about herself. That's a mistranslation. It's not himself, it's herself. She also seems to have been somewhat surprised to be constantly lumped into the same box as neo-Nazi influencers. Recently, Petit declared that she might have to rethink the whole Tradwife thing. Well, it's a wild world out there where you could say that you're, I'm something of an environmentalist myself, and you don't know if you're left or right.
Yeah, I assume if you're eco-fascist, you don't destroy old art. That's the difference between the sort of leftist eco types and the rightist ones. You actually want to preserve stuff. It's not just global warming focused.
Exactly. The introduction to an article by Petit in the New Yorker the other day went as follows. Quote, Elena Kate Petit was at the forefront of an internet movement that promoted the housewife role. Now, she says, it's become its own monster. End quote. But the monster was already up and running before she latched onto the term. She did not lead the movement. Other Tradwife influencers, not at least those who are not white, have also wondered why they're being eased in with genocidal witches, or lumped in along with genocidal Nazi witches. But it's these women who may only be moderate. I think he means like actual witches. Yeah. Like women who proclaim themselves to be witches. But it's these women who may only be moderately conservative and like to dress up on Instagram who invade the party, not the other way around. The neo-Nazis were here long before them. He calls this a Ur soup. A primordial soup, I suppose. It is almost impossible to find out who used the term Tradwife first, but it came from extremely reactionary circles on the extreme right in conjunction with the term trad life. It got a huge boost with both the manosphere and the alt-right movement. One of the first, quote, Tradwives was Isla Stewart, known as a wife with purpose. In 2017, she challenged her followers to give birth to as many white children as possible. Since Tradwife is really more of an ideal of a certain gender role than any genuine subculture or movement, there is a relatively large range within Tradwives on the far right, from Catholic traditionalists in the US who have started wearing veils. Really? Hang on, I'm going to click this. The types of women who bail at Mass. All right. Well, the neo-pagans, often with elements of New Age, Phyllis Schlafly, inspired paleoconservatives, Eva Braun inspired housewives, and from Little Englanders playing Jane Austen to American Christo-fascists playing the old TV series Little House on the Prairie. Influencers. Misunderstandings probably also come from the fact that Tradwives among the extreme right often use the same tactics as the more conservative new, quote, Tradwives. Instagram profiles or blogs full of sweet pictures with more harmonious nature, wellness tips, and so on. Preferably without any explicit Nazi or fascist material. It should also be pointed out that almost all tradwives, neo-Nazis or not, are con artists. If they really lived the lifestyle they show, you wouldn't see a peep of them, except maybe in church on Sunday. Oddly enough, you only see them on Instagram and YouTube with strangely good lighting. So someone filmed and staged these harmonious ladies who supposedly find peace in their work on their small farms and in the kitchen. Think about that exact sentence. I mean, this happened before the Tradwives. There was a wave of like, and there still is a wave of like off-grid living women that got a huge boost on platforms like YouTube, right? Where they would just be like out in nature chopping down a tree wearing like a bikini, basically. Do you remember that?
I do, and I also remember where it went because I followed one of those accounts, and it was like, okay, it starts with okay, regular husband-wife stuff. They just okay, we're just homesteading and figuring things out, and then they took a break. So then it was only the wife wearing skimpy clothing, huge boost in viewing. Then it was even skimpier clothing, and then it's basically that with a link to OnlyFans, and like, damn. Nothing escapes this stuff. You figured out you just wanted a homestead, and you figured out that there was an audience. So you could like whore your wife out on
yeah, exactly,
on the internet. So it's quite disappointing to sit and see. But you have to realize that you got to get off the internet at some point. If you stay on, there's like there's only so many logical endpoints.
We've talked about this before. So far, the only people I can say are doing well after doing YouTube, myself included, is probably Sargon and PewDiePie.
The rest is a graveyard for sanity.
Exactly. Children Kitchen Church. It may be that the term tradwife has now actually been hijacked to such a large extent by more moderately conservative influencers that we simply have to open up to the fact that it means something more than just neo-Nazi eco-girls. The meaning of the terms changes with the times. But to discuss tradwives as if anyone who decides to be a housewife can use it about themselves, and that it's almost a feminist exercise is just wrong. If we allow that tradwifery can be a feminist action, you have to consider feminism dead. A women's liberation movement cannot survive Kinderkirche Kirche as an accepted position. I'm not sure. I mean, just in a purely philosophical sense, it can't. I mean, I thought if you just declare that, if we're being very sort of like liberalist feminism and saying that women can do anything, then that technically includes that too, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've come to understand more about politics reading these other articles, right? And especially how some of the way that the Norwegian left thinks about this and frames themselves. And it's not really the idea that women, okay, you're just a libertarian and women just do whatever they want. It's the idea to sort of involve women in the
Society.
same type of processes as men are, in a sense. And that,
no, obviously, in a political sense, that's the goal, right? You cannot allow it in a political sense. I'm just thinking in a philosophical sort of in a vacuum. As a philosophical thought,
you could always go.
It is compatible. It's just not compatible with the politics that we've been doing for 50 years, right?
Yes, it is compatible in the libertarian sense, but that's just never enough, right? It's kind of ends at the argument in the book, and in real life, people want something more. They're going to expect to at least have women be involved. That they're going to have to be educated and get jobs so that they can. I mean, I see their point. It's not incoherent. I just don't agree with it. In a sense, I don't see the point why all women should have to be involved in this, or like what's the end goal other than just having that as something.
There seems to be an implicit good that's gonna manifest itself once we sort of reach that, that Sanadu, that nirvana, right? Where it's perfectly balanced. And men and women represent 50% of the workforce each or something. If we just manage to include every woman, then something magical will happen, right? That seems to be the politics.
Yeah, for the principled liberal, this is a part of the goal, right? This kind of equality idea that you're supposed to give women the tools to participate, and then you can have a sort of equal participation. And it sounds silly to us, but you have to remember that.
it sounds very normal to a lot of people, but that's sort of where it diverges from the libertarian part of liberalism, I guess, right? Of Western liberalism. And I think on topics like this is where a lot of people start to diverge and end up, well, basically here, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially in practice, the libertarian stuff was never going to be enough, and so it always comes back to this. Like I talked about the last stream, the principled Scandinavian liberal is like the same reason that they hate Israel as partly the same instinct that makes them want to educate women. So it is a kind of weird thing, and not something that's why I keep telling people not to get too excited about these developments with Israel and Palestine, simply because a lot of the instincts that are being turned on Israel right now are fundamentally kind of like leftist gut instincts, which is it's good for us in the kind of cynical way, but a lot of these people are not kind of natural right wingers, and they've not been red, whatever the hell you want, like red pill to mean that's not happened. I think.
Yes. On the other hand, you have a sense of style from another era. You do not, of course, need to be a neo-Nazi. My friend Didrik Söderlin, who himself is no stranger to wrapping his body in garments from a different century than the one we live in, tipped me off about the African-American orchestra leader Dandy Wellington, a man so stylish that you'll feel like a bum looking at him. What is this? Who's Dandy Wellington? Oh, okay, he dresses like yeah, he dresses like he's from 50 years ago, basically. Or I guess it's more now, so 70 years ago. Let's see here. Wellington is painfully aware that the age to which his style of dress belongs to was also one in which those of his color were oppressed, terrorized, and dehumanized. So he has also helped to popularize the slogan, "Vintage style, not vintage values." And I think that's the end of it. Yep.
Well, it's a very concise article, at least for mapping this stuff out. There were a lot of these Tradwives that I didn't know about before reading this, honestly. Even if you are in these spaces yourself, there's just a lot going on. If you're not consciously looking for it, then you likely won't interact with it.
Yeah, exactly. I have been pretty much shielded from anything like this until, 2 weeks ago when it started popping up. I wasn't even aware that this was, like, I'd heard the idea of a Tradwife and knew there were like a couple of influencers out there, but I thought this was just a very niche American thing on TikTok, right?
Yeah, same here, actually. I'm just surprised that it even came up. I thought it was kind of I even thought it was kind of silly in these circles where it's always this kind of super performative stuff. At least the ones that I see on TikTok. If you go on TikTok and Google Tradwife, it's more of this kind of hyper glossy, quasi pornographic, weird stuff like most of that content. So I didn't see much of it that was ideological, but it certainly is an angle if you want to reach women about like
Sure.
the values of motherhood or family, or that sort of extends to the broader nationalist perspective. Then it's completely it's a smart angle, I think.
And it is an angle that is apparently gripping a lot of young women, because we talked about sort of the politics and the drive has been to include women in men's activities at any cost, and it seems that a lot of women are bouncing off of it. From my own personal experience, I'm gonna, what's the word? I'm gonna use very broad strokes here and generalize, but if I'm just thinking about all the women I know, right, and then I select all the women that I know who work full time in a sort of, I want to say, medium to high stress level job, right? So let's say she works an office job 100%, right? Which is 9 to 5 or whatever, Monday to Friday. I can't think of one woman who doesn't have any sort of problem, either physically or psychological, as a sort of consequence of her job or of that environment. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, in spite of being in one of the more equal countries in the world
Yeah.
right now, they'll still have some type of whether it's just like the general health condition not being suited for it or something else,
or having to use weird coping mechanisms to deal with it, right? And we're talking about a 9 to 5 quote unquote regular job that a man would do for 70 years before retiring without really saying anything, right? And that's not to be like a chauvinist or anything. I'm just saying the consequences of these policies, this politics, is quite large, and it's quite hard to track because it's not a A to B logical conclusion.
No, it's I agree. It can be difficult to understand, and I'm not. I mean, I've gotten softer on this over time as well. In terms of, I was very into this total trad totalization ideas in the past, but I'm starting to see that it's. I don't think it's been historically normal to have women only do child rearing or something. Typically, you would have them do support roles or other types of work.
Oh,
if they're
I
not
absolutely
involved
agree.
in child rearing. There's certainly places where they can be quite productive, and you could use them. So
the most productive women I know work part-time, and they're, as far as I know, incredibly happy, right?
Yeah, I get that impression as well. That there's a lot of women have these jobs because they enjoy them, right? I mean, I can't. I mean, yeah, overall happiness has declined, but if at least their health issues are there. But I don't get the impression that they're sort of itching to leave their jobs or something like that. I think a lot of them enjoy.
Sure.
If they have a sort of comfortable office job where they can at least some level socialize or self-actualize, that they're happier with that. At least happy enough, some of them even to forego families, as painful as that is. But I don't know if I talked about this.
Well, I think then you're getting to like bigger, like high stress. My point is, as a background to this article here, a lot of young women seem to be, second guessing themselves over this path, this choice. This article says younger women prioritize well-being over their career. Quote, "It's not about giving up my ambitions." They're called soft girls and trad wives. They romanticize the feminine, soft values, but not everyone can afford to do like them, argues author Lynn Stolzberg. The career rush, the stress, and their time constraints. Such factors are common ingredients in young people's lives today. Several related backlashes characterize social media these days. The tags #tradwife, #softgirl, and #SAHG, which is stay-at-home girlfriend, which I assume. Would you say that if you're a stay-at-home girlfriend, does that mean you don't have children?
I mean, in the statistics, this is true, right? If you look at
that sounds insane.
The fertility rate of a lot of these countries where this is happening does not indicate
you're living in the apartment with your Quirk-chungus boyfriend and your cat, and you're just going to stay at home.
You're taking care of the cat. I mean, some of these women, if they're not on TikTok, right, either trying to sell some type of pornography or ideology, and they're identifying as a soft girl or a trad wife, is probably because they're a bit lazy, honestly. Like this, I think that's more of the type of girls that they're talking about in this article, that there's I'm just staying at home,
or they get really into doing like homeowner association stuff, right? Stuff like things like that, involving themselves in organizations, right? But you got to do something. I mean, just
I guess they have some hobbies or some things that they like to do, but generally they'd rather just do fuck all than have a job or something. For some people, that's kind of more liked, and if it's a higher level of social acceptance or less peer pressure to do something else, then some people will just forgo it entirely. Not. I think both for men and women, some people just don't want to do shit like that.
That's true. Yeah,
it's like that scene in Office Space or something. I don't know if you remember that movie where he.
Which with I remember. Is it the what do you actually do here?
No, it's the he's talking to his friend like that. The main character. He lives with this guy who has got like a mullet and a mustache.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
they're sitting on the sofa, and he's asking about, what do you want to do with your life, and if you
yeah,
had $1 million, what do you want to do? Well, I would just do nothing. Well,
yeah.
you don't need $1 million to do nothing. My friend is poor. I don't do shit. You can just stay at home
That's a
as
great
is. And
movie. Yeah.
I mean, but there's some truth to that. You don't need that much money to do nothing, and some
No, you
people
don't.
would honestly prefer that. It's not the majority, but I do speak for some people at least, that they just rather just not do shit at certain points in their life.
I just like my power tools. I've come to realize. I think I said this last week that I've traded a life of potential Funko Pops for just power tools instead. That's all I spend my money on these days.
Home improvement, like that show.
Yeah, exactly. With what's his name, Tim something. Yeah.
The comments can correct it.
We're going to take an aside here for a moment because Javier Olivia commented here saying the concept of the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world has been lost and replaced with feminist self-actualization. In the US, women would focus on the family until their kids were near high school age. And then they would dominate local, county, state government, school boards, library boards, other local government. These women were usually college educated, but deferred their careers until their children were raised, and then essentially ran a very small to medium-sized town in the US. So that is one path forward in sort of like a more civic libertarian world, right?
Yeah, it sounds very kind of core Americana, honestly. They have a different way of thinking about things there, and it's absolutely true, at least historically. But I think some of that's gotten lost with more of the digital society and the breakdown of local communities, at least to the point where we are now. There's just no. I mean, civic participation is just at a record low. I think people are at home with their computers, with their performances and their digital communities instead of actually doing real ones, because it's just not as fun.
Which is it's not as easy, right? It's annoying. It's hard. Let's see here. Brent Taylor is accusing me of being a Bosch man. I used to be a Bosch man when I first moved out. I had one drill and like one just like a grass cutter. But nowadays all of my tools are DeWalt, which is probably just as bad but just expensive. I don't actually know. It's just it's been one thing after the other, and it's like when you buy the lineup, you can keep using like the same batteries or the same sort of, if you hook your vacuum up to the tool, right? It's all that like ecosystem stuff. What's my tool of choice? I've had a huge like revelation in like the past 2 months. I've been doing stuff for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years at home, and I finally got a speed square, and that's been a real game changer. Like the amount of stuff you can do with the speed square is insane. So it's actually not a power tool. It's just a speed square. That's saving me a lot of time. All right, let's keep going here. It's not about giving up my ambition, says job counselor and yoga teacher Sinev Sanger, that's a job counselor. I'm not sure if that's like a job counselor at an organization or a business, or if she's like what's it called, like a coach.
Well, yeah, it does sound like this type of role that you have. I talked to a job counselor when I was in like junior high school or something, when they try to ask you about your further education path. They'll ask you what kind of role do you think you'd fit in. That's what comes to mind for me.
Sure, that might be it. Yeah. But apparently it's not a full-time job because she's also a yoga teacher. When she reads Teresa Solin's critical comment about the phenomenon in the Evening Post, she reacts, saying that Pilates can possibly be as much fun as some people want it to be. I'm a soft girl, and I'm proud of it. A way to regain her autonomy. Being a Being a soft girl is about embracing feminine soft values. There is a focus on the body, health, and well-being. The term tradwives encompass something a little different. Here, traditional gender roles are romanticized. The man works, and the woman takes care of cooking, housework, and the family. The common denominator is that both movements value unpaid work and focus on values outside of capitalism. The goal is to reach a more harmonious life. It's a way of regaining autonomy over my life, she says. Who says that she can't? Sorry, who says that she doesn't quite recognize herself in the tradwife concept? Sanger grew up with chronically ill parents, and she worried a lot. It was important to her to have lots of friends and to do well at school. Eventually, she felt that the stress level was getting too high. She discovered yoga, mindfulness, which she noticed had a good effect on her health. Eventually, the lifestyle had changed completely. When you look at the influencers who have embraced this lifestyle on TikTok, it's easy to think that they have cracked the code. The harmonious life is achieved. But it's important to be critical of all these influencers, says sociologist and author Lynn Stolzberg. Stolzberg has written about the modern times, capitalism, and feminism. She believes that many of the influences are performative, that they play for the gallery. Play for the gallery. Oh, like that. They're preaching to the choir, I guess. Anyone who deals with social media knows that filming yourself, editing videos, publishing, and building a profile requires an enormous amount of work. Some people probably earn quite a bit of money from this. The movement is thus not necessarily so anti-capitalist and anti-career, even if the women stay at home. Some of these female influencers also live in families with a lot of money. I checked on some of them. It is expensive to live, and it goes without saying that this lifestyle is for the few. There exists a class divide here. And I'm going to say, because this has been going for a while, like my wife and I have been sending these like trad wife articles back and forth to each other because we like talking about it. And I say, every time one of these like trad wives are being interviewed, it's like they either they're like stay-at-home moms, right? That's what they're doing. But they like run 4 like Instagram accounts, and they have like a business selling interior design stuff online, and their husband is like a godillionaire, right? It's it's like every time it's like, yeah, but you're not a stay-at-home wife. You have like 2 jobs, right?
Yeah, I run a clothing store. I'm like owner of a clothing brand that my husband bought.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, this is it is true for a lot of these people. I think you could have more of this relaxed life, provided that you actually live with your family and your house is paid down, right? That you're going to inherit your house. If you have to buy like a new house or pay rent, then you're kind of in this middle again.
I think it was one of them. I remember they moved out into the countryside because they could basically get a cheaper home and they could live off of just the man's pay, right? Just the husband's pay. Like they made that conscious decision. And then, you know, just to have something to do, she's doing the sort of Instagram thing, but she's not really making a lot of money on it, according to herself, right? Yeah. Like one of probably like 20 or something.
So, I mean, there's like two impulses in me when it comes to this stuff. There's 2, what do you call it? There's 2 wolves inside you, right? Fighting for dominance. One wolf is like, fuck materialism. I want people to basically just, okay, you don't need to do that much. We don't need to consume product. We don't need to do this. I'm sort of happy. You don't need to participate in this system. Good for them. Big thumbs up. On the other side, I've been wrestling with the question, what are we supposed to do to make Europe anything else than a vacation colony?
Yep.
And that would mean doing less of this. Actually being kind of more Americanized and producing more stuff and working harder and actually creating innovation, being a little bit more American or Israeli in the attitudes that we have to be able to attain more independence. So at least with me, that's kind of what I'm wrestling with currently. I don't know how to balance out these perspectives.
It's the soul of Western manletic path. We want what we can't have.
I want the vacation colony, but I'm starting to see how it's a trap, honestly, from everything from like sovereignty to to basically like the future of the West in general. I think Peter Thiel in that book, what's the 0 to 1 or something? What's the blue ocean strategy?
Oh
I
yeah,
don't remember. People can correct me, but he talks about that as well, where he says that Europe is governed by what do you call, like, melancholic pessimism or something, or undetermined pessimism, where it's really like they don't know where things are going, and they're all pessimistic that things are going to get any better. So
it's
they just
perpetually over.
they just go out and drink wine. Basically, that's kind of the. And I didn't think that much of it when I read it. It's like I was kind of scoffed at it. But the older I get and the way I see Europe working, it's actually true. So much of Europe is just kind of set up to be the sort of vacation colony for old people that, yeah, you can work a sort of minimal amount of time and just travel to other countries, and you could drink wine. And I mean, how much of this of the continent is supposed to just be old people driving around looking at castles and drinking wine and stuff? Like, I mean, I used to sort of think that we've lost the conservative values, and we kind of we've gotten too hooked up in modernity and stuff. But what is actually there is just a bunch of old people who want to just preserve old stuff to maintain their own property values and go on vacation. That's actually the majority of the people who live in Europe.
That I was at vacation a couple of weeks ago. We went to Greece, and we went to a lot of different Greek islands. And I was the person in our group who dragged, we're gonna go up to the old Venetian castle and have a look. That's what we're gonna do today. And then there's this, we're gonna do. There's this nice wine country out here. We're gonna have a look at that, and maybe we can stop by one of the wine vineyards. It's not the word, and have a glass. So I'm the old boomer.
You're already on the tractor. That's going to be the rest of your life.
I'm ready
until you're 80 years old. That's like working 7 hours a day, and then taking the money to go on vacation in these in these sort of fine locations with ruins of like glory days of the past. That's kind of it. And like it's a good thing. We got a comment from Landcraft there who says none of the Russian spare countries are vacation hotspots, which is true. It's just for the wrong reasons. It's not because they're hyper.
Yeah, wonderful. May his armies come soon, Bloody Path. Inshallah.
That's it. That solves my problem there. Thanks. I'm just gonna shut up about.
Thanks.
About
you can vacate in Siberia. That's great. All right. We have to get going. It's almost 50 minutes. Synnøve Sanger agrees that much of the content on social media can be polished and performative, and in that way contributes to people feeling like a failure. It's important for me to point out that the soft girls movement should not be another self-help trend where people have to feel that they have to perform. She believes that the movement is fundamentally about taking the simple steps in life to take better care of yourself. These are women who would like to contribute to professional life and society, but who also want to take better care of their health, she said in a debate on the Evening News. There, she met Theresa Solian, who believes that the movement's attitudes can be quite destructive. The women's liberation has worked hard to combat the attitude that women cannot handle the same workload as men. It is an incomprehensible reversal of 70 years of women's struggle. Well, I mean, yeah, sure. But as we said before, I feel like I think it's time to acknowledge that we can strive for some sort of equality in terms of divvying up labor, right? Without excluding women from daily work. And I do believe that the women's liberation stuff is in a way just as much a culprit as sort of the tradwife culture at sort of painting a wrong picture of what the world used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you think you're blackpilling, imagine what these kind of feminist liberal types are doing, right? The feminist liberals and the LGBTQ fighters and all these people. What the future, if it current trends are any indication, all of their quote unquote hard work fell apart because nobody gave a shit in the end. That's kind of their issue for good and for bad. I mean that apathy is going to affect other aspects of society as well that I think are good, but it's sort of come to a civilizational point where it's like, okay, we've built up this civilization where women work as much as men do, and LGBT people have these rights, and people just didn't give a shit. It was just not that important.
Now what?
In the long run? Yeah. Now what? What were you going to do? It wasn't some kind of like strong conservative resurgence. It's like it was just not that important.
Yeah.
So we're putting it on the closet, back in the closet again.
A larger societal problem. Isabella Giovanardi Mira is a 25-year-old medical student from Stavern who identifies with the soft girl movement. I still can't nail down what the soft girl is. Is it just like, let's see, health comes before work. How can you build on your good health? Such to approach was okay, whatever. She believes it's messing up the translation. I don't have the time to do the live translation here. She believes that the society has long gone in a wrong direction. Wow, hard agree, Isabella. Maybe this is what was the word? Like the neo-Nazi witch?
Yeah, it's the soft girls. It was the soft girls the whole time.
Yeah. This is a much bigger social problem that most people understand. We have become blind to the mentality that everyone has to go up and forward. I think that everything that the economy the line has to go up. It's a constant pursuit of something more and bigger. Well, that is just, what's the, I keep, that is the Faustian spirit of Western civilization, I guess. With education and work in the health sector, she sees daily examples of burnout and stress. And that's one article that we don't have time to get into right now, but there seems to be a massive issue of women in the health sector, both as nurses and doctors, having a hard time keeping up with the amount of work and the stress. And so they're dropping out, or in some cases becoming ill, and in the worst, suicidal. In home care, I meet many elderly people, and no one tells me that they regret not working more. They regret not being more present, is all they say. Mira believes that the growth mentality comes at the expense of values such as humanity, community, tranquility, and nature. Wow, so just like the neo-Nazi witches. These values are valued in the soft girl movement, and Mira hopes that it can become a catalyst for a softer society. The truth is that soft girls are not enough. We need soft humans. I think much more of the world would be better if we changed our values from power, money, and success to love, community, and peace. Isn't that nice, Lilypath?
That sounds a little Longhouse. I was on board until they talked about soft humans. Actually,
I agree. To work or not to work? After the pandemic, the conversation about working life has flourished. Ideas about working less or differently abound. Last year, a documentary film, After Work, explored whether new technology can lead to a life where we work less. In the same year, the phenomenon of quiet quitting became widespread in social media. It's about making the minimum effort in working life. Other phenomena promote a narrative that hard work pays off, such as hustle culture and the girl boss trend. At the same time, we don't have to. I want to talk a bit about this, but I don't have time to get into it. At the same time, the challenges in working life are great, both globally and in Norway. From 2022 to 23, there were 11,000 more unemployed people in Norway. That's a bit of an iffy stat to pull out, because Norway is like boasting one of the lower unemployment rates we've had in like a long time. So, sort of hyper focusing on that one stat is giving the wrong picture, I think.
Of course, you have to account for labor participation as well, which I think is it's a little bit worse. But for the people
Fair
who
enough.
want work, there is work.
Oh, most certainly, yeah. About half of these were under 25 years of age. In addition, 8 out of 10 young workers say that they have experienced or been close to experiencing burnout. I can see that. Both Stolzberg and Sanger believe that the movement can be seen as a reaction to society's development with high pressure and demands that the individual can achieve everything. These trends apparently represent something stable and safe, values outside of paid work with focus on care and living a little more harmoniously. That's understandable. But not having an income and not being in work also makes you vulnerable, so that freedom can be quite fragile, she says. Well, yes. I mean, yes. Money can be exchanged for goods and services. The problem arises when it becomes the individual's choice to withdraw from society, she believes. It would be more positive if we could come together to achieve a 6-hour working day or other collective solutions. One could, of course, add goodwill or good faith, hope that these trends increase the focus on the balance between work and leisure time. Sanger believes that the soft girl trend is a good start to a collective movement that can eventually lead to political change. I believe that together we can arrive at a better balance, she says. That's the end of the article.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't care that much, especially for people in Europe, Northern Europe and Scandinavia, sit and talk about shorter work days, because compared to the rest of the world, we already have like the shortest work weeks.
We do, yeah.
I don't know how much shorter you're gonna get it. Like you're doing really well compared to pretty much everybody else. You could probably find some ways to cut down on your own work week instead of having everybody do a mandatory 6 hours. It's getting a little ridiculous, to be honest. At this point, if people want to work more, you're gonna have to let them 8 hour sleep, 8 hour work, 8 hour leisure. I think it's fine. To be honest, I don't see there being a lot of gains to be made there from trying to upset that. But yeah, maybe that's a discussion for another time. But I think while we're still on here, maybe we should jump on to the next topic.
We have to quickly jump over to the next topic. Yeah. Why don't you lead into this while because I've lost the articles.
Let's see if I can find if I can find. Maybe I can share a little bit. I'm just going.
Yeah, I got a bad gateway on one of these. I don't know if it's on my end.
Let's see, presenter, shared screen.
Brent Taylor says, in America, you aren't considered full-time under 40 hours. Yeah, but Americans are insane the other direction. And also everything I've heard about people I've known who have lived and worked in America, they say that Americans are incredibly inefficient, despite working like 12 hours. Also,
nobody who works 12 hours a day is efficient. That's just my experience. Where it doesn't matter. Like maybe you're working hard, but you're not working efficiently if you're spending that much time working. If you're actually using focused time, then you run out in like maybe 5 or 6 hours or something. Then you're kind of fried. And you can do some low effort stuff, but I mean, if you're doing 12 hours, then you're like taking multiple lunches and going dinner outside and chatting at the coffee machine, and well, it's just kind of having super long culture. Meetings,
yeah,
but I don't doubt that Americans do work harder, and their GDP shows that, and these various economic educated and you know. You can sit and kind of make fun of that and think that that's stupid, but it's part of the reason why they're able to be dominant geopolitically. I'm going back to this kind of vacation colony stuff again, that as much as you could sort of sit and laugh at American influencers or American values, like this hard work stuff has worked for them. It does help on the aggregate to kind of put them above board. Put them ahead of everybody else. You know, I mean, you could say that it's the military, but the military requires the economy as well, and having the dynamic private sector.
Brent Taylor here in the comments brings up that this is not true for actual labor. I would agree. I mean, most of my anecdotal evidence is from white collar work, and I'm sure if you work in a factory or if you work construction, you probably put in the hours and do a lot of hard work. So I'm not trying to like disrespect that. I'm just saying there's something up when you have these long work hours. Especially we talked about this before when an economy like Germany is able to, I'm not going to say compete, but to pull out or push out as much sort of GDP as they do on a much shorter time frame. There's room for improvement, right? But America also has a lot less incentives for improvement and efficiency, in the sense that they have just, masses of bodies to throw at problems that no other European country has.
Yeah, they do. I mean, there's something to be said for American immigration and integration and so on. We don't have to get into that, but as many problems as you get with immigration in general, there is a sort of at least short to medium term benefit from a geopolitical standpoint as to what that does, or otherwise this just wouldn't be a thing. But it is a pattern that you're seeing throughout history again, that they're just bringing in other populations to do work that you don't have enough hands to do, or people don't want to do, even if it's at the cost of social cohesion in the long run, which it usually is. Let's see here. So we have our friend here, Hans-Jørgen Lysglimt Johansen. He's sitting on the right, and they've been talking about his court case. It's basically a kind of two what do you call it? It's two cases rolled up into one.
Yeah.
So one of them is related to tax fraud, or what do you call it, like welfare fraud. Which is
welfare and insurance fraud, I think.
It's actually a little bit complicated. I'm not going to try to explain it correctly, because I've heard it from different people and I still didn't quite understand exactly what it is, but it's basically a accounting mess because he's an entrepreneurial type. He has multiple companies, and he's also running a political party that he's running in a very kind of unorthodox style. So there's been a lot of problems in terms of accounting for the money that's gone in and out of let's say his ecosystem of registered companies. So that's one thing, and the other thing is then a hate speech issue that is sort of based on Twitter. Actually, that's a little bit more interesting because we've talked about it before, like the Norwegian, constitutional paragraph 185 that does encompass hate speech and what exactly it means, because it's there. It's been expanded multiple times to include, starting with ethnic. Let's see, maybe I can just get the link and we could look at that.
Sure.
So I'm not just making stuff up. Let's see here.
So what we've done here, which we're not going to show you, is that he uploaded his entire appeal to the court for this case, which includes, his defense of, which mostly includes his defense of his hate speech, as it were. And it's about 20 minutes of him telling the court his, what you call it, his red pill story, and sort of laying the basis for why he would be in trouble to begin with, and then like it just derails to like an hour of him not understanding what context means and accusing the prosecutor of hating him and being a Freemason and a lot of weird stuff.
Well, it's interesting because I'm watching his videos, and he seemed very confident about this case, that he had counter evidence, and that he was it was kind of a non-starter and blah blah blah, and he was going to be able to fight the spiritual war against the Norwegian Judea with the kind of like Vedic pagan sect fighting it out against Norwegian Jewry in the courts. What actually happened, as it does with people who only get their news from BitChute, is that he was just steamrolled in the courtroom. At least that's how he described it himself. I'm just going to look at the paragraph for a few minutes. So this is like I don't have the translator, but it's about like hateful speech. So you could be jailed up to 3 years for basically speech that is discriminatory, hateful, or it sort of includes use of symbols or behavior that would put people in danger. It's kind of the idea, or to encourage persecution of other groups. So it's really, okay, what's included in it. Point A, skin color, ethnicity, nationality. Point B, religion. And what do you call it, like philosophy, outlook. Point C, sexual orientation. And then point B, that's been added recently, it's like gender identity, which is a controversial one. And then the last point is then a handicap.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, Lysglimt has 2 Twitter accounts, and he has been just tweeting, the case file, it's like printouts of over 600 tweets that he
insane.
did.
Yeah.
To the point, like, that's where it's too bad that we don't have video of the prosecution, because they just sort of went over like 200 tweets or something that he had done, and he had to just sort of sit there and try to explain what it's about. But the appeal that he made is just kind of bizarre, because it doesn't really address this point at all. He's sort of accused of, okay, the tweets that he made constitutes a violation of this law, which is interesting from a judicial point of view, because as far as I know, there's not been that many people who's actually been convicted to jail for this. There have been people
because
who
it's such a vague law. It's hard to basically bring it to court, it seems.
So most of it gets sent to the police, and then they will just drop the case. That's what happened. That's what's happened in most of the cases where people have been reported for this. It's that it's been
it's happened for Lysglimt Johansen as well on multiple occasions. In terms of like single instance tweets. What it seems to be this time is that he's been tweeting, no things for so long that sort of the amassed 600 tweet list is now enough to get him indicted.
So the first time it was just sort of on single tweets, and that was put away. But then now it's kind of like, okay, let's just say his entire account basically that he's being accused of using to violate this. And of course, the judgment here will be very interesting because that'll set the standard in the future for what's allowed or not allowed. There's been some other things that have been happening in Norway as well. There was a murder case in Norway. We were going to talk about it, but we cut it in the interest of time. But there's been Norwegian news outlets in the sort of allowable opposition space that put out cell phone footage of that murder, right? The person getting stabbed. It's not very graphic, but you can see it happening. And this is the type of thing that you see if you have a Twitter, then this comes up on your timeline, that you get snuff videos from like Mexican cartels, Ukraine war, Gaza. Yeah. It happens all the time. But in Norway, there are different rules for this. Like you have the rules for journalism that you're not really allowed to reveal identities of people or show their faces in the newspaper before the actual judgments have been passed and so on. So there's, even though you're putting it on a global platform, you're still under Norwegian's jurisdiction if you're doing it from here. At least that's the way I understood it, because the people who put that stuff up have been reported. So there's going to be some cases like this in the future as well, where we're going to see exactly how the law is applied. Looking at Lysglimt and his case here, I would assume that he would get maybe 3 to 6 months. That's my prediction on this, just based on my gut feeling, because he I mean, they have the tax case, right? And if the tax case is sort of an open and shut thing that he can't account for it, and he's actually guilty of fraud, then he will be put in jail for that, and he might get some extra time for this for the hate speech thing. It would have been more interesting to get the hate speech thing by itself to see how much that actually matters, and not just as an add-on to the fraud. So, but yeah, some other funny things that happened in this court case. He, I mean, just like his appeal was completely useless, and he just spent 2 hours talking about how he used to be a libertarian and how he's like friends with everybody on the internet, or that you have internet rules for, what do you call it, banters, or like basically every irrelevant detail that you could think of about his life that he discussed without actually talking about the case itself. Yeah. I mean, I would basically, but he seems to have at least loyal fans who, let's see, did I get the photo from the court? Maybe that was just in the Telegram chat. I could find the tweet.
Is this from outside the court?
Yeah, the one from the outside of the court.
Yeah, I can send it to you. I can send you the link. Here you go. If you just bring that up, it's in the private chat on.
I just need to get it in the right tab so that the audience can see. Here, and paste. So this is what was going on outside of the court. He had brought in some people from his movement, Alternative for Norway, and also the Hare Krishna movement.
I think there seems to be some overlap. Yeah.
The Indian guy here. He has some more footage of him with them. This is prior to the case.
Banging the drum and chanting
on the day, but like what they're sort of about. Bad gateway, huh? I can't.
Yeah, I was getting that. I was getting that earlier.
Well, what about? Didn't I share some tweet with you? I think.
Yeah, you want the tweet with the video? Yeah. I can play that. Let me just remove you, and I'll add myself here. One moment.
So many channels that are moving around, so it becomes difficult to track.
Sure. All right, so this is a clip from outside. I believe this is before the trial.
This is kind of the pump-up session for the
trial. I just
want
to say, like, if you're sort of positioned yourself on the on being the outsider in Norwegian politics, you've been quite vocal about being, I guess, on the right. You've been anti-vaccinations, anti-this, anti-that, anti-basically everything the government's been doing. And you've been called in, into the lion's den, as it were, to answer for your crimes. It might be, a hack job, but this is something that you shouldn't do, in my opinion. Like, you're playing the wrong game. Hey, I don't know what this guy believes. Like, I'm serious. After his like 90-minute rant in the courtroom about how he's like a libertarian who realized that we actually need borders, and this is, you know, this is a hit job from what's his name, Irving Cohn, who we talked about before.
It's a magical
and all
Jew.
this stuff. It's just, I mean, just in like a tactical way, what is happening here, right?
Well, I think I can explain because I've followed him for a bit longer. So he's just gone down the rabbit hole of all rabbit holes, and I mean, you could call this red pill. I would call it red pill maybe a few years ago, but at this point, I've just sort of rejected that frame entirely because I've seen so many people who become like this. Where this is what happens when you get all your news from BitChute. If you just kind of like reject any kind of legacy media and you're only consuming alternative news, basically psyops. Like, I mean, I know we are in this space, and I talked about this before, like the importance of trying to find independent journalists and some alternate outlets, particularly for patching up things that are like ideological blind spots in mainstream media. For example, if you want to know the name of perpetrators or sort of racial angles to issues that they're not going to talk about because it's taboo, which is fine. Or you could get general system skepticism. But if you are at the point where you're getting all of your information from these kind of alternate news sources, you're just basically eating like just a mass of Zionist, Russian, Chinese propaganda at once, and your entire worldview is just that. So this doesn't answer the question, but it's just kind of an explanation as to why I think people get like this. So he goes down the rabbit hole of like, okay, well, libertarianism is not enough because of the refugee crisis, so we need nationalism. Okay, then it's like Christianity, but then you realize that, well, Christianity is actually Judaic. It's like an Abrahamic thing, so he thinks that's cooked. So you have to go back to paganism, right?
But it's not even paganism. He's like adopting like Indian Krishna stuff.
But we're getting to that because I mean, Hinduism is paganism, right? It's like the last living tradition of paganism. So he's like a Vedic pagan. That's a part of this Hare Krishna movement. So that's kind of the logic here. It's like sort of the last living remnants of the pagan tradition, because they consider like
because
Nordic
it's
paganism as dead.
Yeah, because it's Indo-European and Hyperborean. Is that it?
Yeah, that's the idea. That the Indians, kind of the Hare Krishna movements, are like a natural allies against the world Jewry, even though the Indians are usually the biggest ass kissers of Israel on the planet, which I talked to him about, but he doesn't seem to. It doesn't seem to stick.
It's kind of weird whenever you stumble over like weird Indians making strange memes about how they're like Israel's greatest ally or something.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. I assume it's some kind of like Muslim hate by proxy that the Indians are engaging in. That's the only kind of reasoning I have for why they're so into Israeli stuff. But it seems to be a very persistent meme. I mean, I think the best thing in this case would have been for him to sort of just plead insanity or something, but he's not doing any of that. He just came in front of the court to sit and tell his entire red pill story and just talk about every kind of irrelevant bit of opposition news trivia. It's kind of like, when I heard his appeal, I was thinking about this Reddit thread that I saw when you had some people who were talking about, they were like American liberals, right? And they, a couple who were having a visit from another couple who were Trump supporters. And they were kind of describing the dynamics between kind of these sort of like urban Democrats and the Trump supporters, that they felt.
Did we lose Ludwig Path? I think we might have lost Ludwig Path. Hopefully he'll come back soon. He was in the middle of his argument here, but while he's gone, we can have some more tool talk. How about that? So if I scroll up, oh, he's back. Was it me?
Did you fall out, or did I fall out? I'm not sure now.
I've been alone here for about 30 seconds.
Oh, well, I think I didn't notice anything. So
people are posting F in the chat.
Yeah,
the Indians got him.
Okay, right. Where did I fall out here? I
don't know. Are you able to start over at the Indian stuff?
Okay, Indians. Yeah,
it was right after the Indians simping for Israel.
Okay, yeah, okay. When I was listening to the appeal of Hans-Jørgen Lysglimt, what came to mind is a Reddit thread that somebody posted on Twitter, where you had some urban Democrat couple, right, from the United States, sort of higher upper middle class Democrats, who talked about, yeah, we met another couple that we were going on a double date with, and that couple was, they were Trump supporters, and they talked about the dynamic between the liberal couples and if they brought in like a mutual friend or mutual friends who were Trump supporters, and that they felt like whenever they brought the Trump supporters along, they've been watching a lot of this kind of Q stuff, and it's like they're kind of, you imagine you're loading up a large mechanical spring that's just loaded with like a giant bag of trash, and they're just kind of like firing that at you. And they have to just sit for an hour and just sit and talk about all of this kind of bullshit that they've been watching on, alternative media.
You have to
sites.
like info dump on Q.
They have to info dump the Q stuff on you, right? Every irrelevant bit of information that they've just been angry about, or every piece of like fake news that they've read, that they're like super mad that this has happened, and that's kind of how they felt. And honestly, I kind of like that metaphor, because that's how I felt about his appeal. It's really just kind of like loading up the spring with useless garbage narratives and then just unloading it, thinking that this does something, when in reality you're actually in a court case on a specific charge, and you have to actually answer for that specific thing, or just shut up and let your lawyer do it. And but instead you sort of just get this, okay, I'm just going to tell you about everything that I'm interested in right now, or every news story that I've watched about Bitcoin taking over the world, or the petrodollar being cancelled, or sort of vaccines killing children. They're like, but that's kind of what it was like. He brought up every single point as if like it doesn't matter to the point. Like, the judge being a Freemason doesn't change anything. Even if that's something you suspect. So
sure, but in that situation, it's like, what good is that going to help you?
Yeah, it's not. That's just the point. But I think people who watch a lot of, you watch a lot of alt news, that you're just walking around getting mad about a lot of stuff, that when you're talking to normies, they have no idea about it, or it's completely irrelevant to their life and what they're doing.
And even if it did, right? Yeah. Even if all the things you believe at that moment is actually true, then you're basically, as I said, you're in the lion's den, and they can just convict you whenever they want. You've lost, essentially.
Yeah.
So why would you act like an unhinged lunatic?
Yeah, there's no reason, but I will at least conclude this, because I've seen how normies have reacted to this on Twitter. Like, there's some people who are saying that he's like a very malicious guy, and he deserves this because he's putting the Jews at risk or whatever. And you have the other people who are saying that this is guy's a used car salesman, but he's just a scammer. But I honestly believe, at least after watching his appeal, that he's 100% sincere. He's not a scammer. He's not anything else like this, because if you were a scammer, you'd actually get something out of this. I mean, at least you'd have more money on your account after
make more money doing this than he has. Yeah,
at least you'd make more money doing it, or be able to build some clout or something. But like, the way it looks for me is that he's actually lost money and clout and position and status from doing it, and he continues to lose and just kind of fall out. And I don't know why you would do this to yourself if you're not getting anything for it, other than the explanation that you actually believe it. You see what I mean? So yeah, that's at least my conclusion. The guy is 100% sincere, so I'm actually feeling kind of sorry if he goes to jail. But again, he's not somebody that I would. I'm probably not going to vote for his party in the next election. I can tell you that.
Sorry if you're listening. We're not going to vote.
Yeah, and of course that's, even though like maybe I share some kind of ideological affinity for the things he's talking about, if you're this incompetent, there's just no point. And that's a kind of common refrain with a lot of these parties that are too small to get into parliament, is that they just don't have the capital
exactly
to get anything done. Even though you might agree with them ideologically, there's just too much kook factor and disagreeableness and general kind of personality. I don't know what you want to call it. Antisocial personality traits that are floating around in these kind of alt spheres. to the point where you might as well get someone who's like, I guess, someone who is just conservative, who you maybe align with on a few points, and you think that they can do a competent job. At least that's where I stand now.
It's a tough pill to swallow. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm on board with you yet, but I understand what you're saying. Do we have anything else we want to cover before we have usually? I mean, it's becoming a bit of a regular segment. And we have, of course, our resident botnik hunter Luddic Path here on stream, and I believe you collected some more examples of what you call Russian narratives.
Yeah. It was Carl Herben Habermas who was suggesting this to me, that I should just have like a 10-minute segment in every episode where I just go over like the what's like the Russian narrative now, like a weather forecast or something. So I thought, I just thought that would be funny at the few ones that I collected. I mean, of course, there's like always 100 that are going at the same time, but we'll see the ones that are the most relevant to what we're doing.
I'm going to share your screen now. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Just making sure that this is the thing you wanted to show.
So, yep. So the
if this goes on for longer, I'm going to have to make like a sting, like an audio cue for this segment.
Yeah, I think we might have to. So this was like what's been happening now. I don't know if we can get the sound here. This is, we've talked about him before. Like we had Burkhardt on. So this is Finland's president and former prime minister, former finance minister Alexander Stubb, and he's been at the I think this is at the Peace Summit, where he made some disparaging comments about Russia. I think he sort of, I'm not sure if this is the clip, but he sort of inferred that if Xi Jinping made one call, he could stop the Russo-Ukrainian war immediately, right? So just kind of implying that Russia is really more of a client state of China at this point. And of course, when people make comments like that, especially if they're like important political people, they usually get like some sort of narrative spun around them or their nation. Let's just listen to the clip.
Russia invaded Finland in World War II. We lost 10% of our territory, including the land where my grandparents were born and where my father was born. This is why the reaction from our side has been so vehement. Russia invaded Finland in...
Okay, that wasn't the clip, but let's see. So we have one of my favorite Russian propaganda accounts, the Trollstoy. See, during the Ukraine quote-unquote peace summit in Switzerland, the Finnish president Alexander Stubb complains that Russia quote-unquote invaded his country during World War II and took 10% of its territory. For those not strong on history, 100% of Finnish territory is a generous gift from the Russian Empire. In World War II, 100% of Finland fought on the side of Hitler. Finnish forces were involved in the blockade of Leningrad. As such, they were involved in the deaths of millions of Russians by starvation. So, and he's not the only one that's going with this now, but it's we have the standard narrative. We got this kind of performative Russian anti-Nazism, and also the kind of like, this is Russia's territory. So they're now basically talking about the denazification of Finland, which was just a joke that I made on the Sons of the North stream when we were talking about you know how they had a documentary about the like these Nazi groups in Finland that go to black metal concerts, and I said that Putin will use footage of these Nazi groups as an excuse to annex Finland at some point. And like this is actually kind of the dialogue now that's being pushed out in by some of these accounts, that they're saying that, well, it's you're lucky to even have a country, and the Finns are basically Nazi sympathizers. It's kind of the same thing that they're accusing the Ukrainians of, that sort of the Ukrainian, like Russian resistance. It's very, it's tied to Nazi support, right? But even Russia itself teamed up with Nazi Germany during World War II. Some people point that out. But like in the Russian narrative, it's basically them against the Nazis, like being attacked by Nazis, and they see, the Finns are Nazi supporters, the Ukrainians are Nazi supporters, and all of these kind of like the Baltic countries, and they always go back to these Nazi groups, and that you should just consider yourself lucky that that Russia doesn't invade. And it's a pervasive narrative, because if I go down here, you get like these kind of types like this guy, the MAGA-peds, Americans who are like talking about Finnish history and like the atrocities of Finnish Nazism here, and how Finns should just shut the fuck up and just become Russian. So it's very impressive to see like the reach that some of these narratives have, especially with Americans. See if I can find some other examples. Oops, just a moment. Here we have another meme, Aussie Cossack, Finland to Russia from 1809. Finland was a part of the Russian Empire until 1917. So it's like Putin coming in destination, Helsinki occupation, or just visiting. See another one here. Yeah, this is a bit more dramatic. The account is called Holocaust in Ukraine, and it's a bit more about sort of highlighting the crimes of the Ukrainian people. Here we say the Soviet Union executed them after World War II. And the name of, let's say, Valsov in the Russian is synonymous with betrayal and treason. There's no monuments for them in Russia, and everybody hates them, unlike Ukraine, the Baltics, and Finland with their collaborators. So it's back to, they talk about, yeah, that's what I talked about, the Nazis who fought for Nazi Germany. Like they talked, well, we disposed of them, right? We've disposed of our own Nazis inside of Russia, but we've not disposed of the Baltics and the Finns yet. So that's what's coming down the line. I mean, these are just some of the accounts, but these are like big accounts that were pushing this, and especially this is something that you sort of expect after like some Finnish leader pops off against Putin, typically. So I mean, what else has been going on? Recently Putin was at a visit in North Korea to create a sort of mutual military alliance with is it Kim Jong-un, who's the sitting president
in North Korea?
In North Korea,
yeah.
So I mean, this is where I see sort of a split, where some of these more high IQ pro-Russian types, like say the Judge Napolitano crowd, they will just shut their mouth about this because it's actually not very good optics. But you have some of the more kind of like low IQ, kind of MAGA styled Russian guys who were just running stuff like this. It's like, this is what the right side of history looks like. Fuck NATO. I stand with Putin and Kim Jong-un.
Didn't you send me like a weird edit of these guys in like medieval armor?
Oh yeah. No, I think I just reposted it. Actually, some of these things I don't even quote tweet. I just repost them unironically because I think it's just so the optics of it is just so awful.
I mean, the photo went hard. I'm not gonna lie.
This was the Michael.
Seeing Kim Jong-un in like full knight armor, it's a bit of a juxtaposition because he's a bit of a small pudgy dude, right?
I don't know if I put it in the sheet, but I did put it on my in my feed. So there's another account there. This is a truly historic moment. The pathetic seed in the comments proves it. Everything falls into place now. Historians will mark this as the moment that the U.S. started losing Korea and the peninsula's liberation finally began, ushering in an era of peace and prosperity. So that's what they're sort of running. Is that
we're really crossing the streams of propaganda now? Yeah,
yeah. But we cross. This is like the Rubicon moment for Putin when they made they allied themselves with North Korea and they turned the tide of the war. It's like the multipolar W in a sense. I'll just go into my profile to see if I can get the Hyperborean one, because this actually I was surprised that McGregor went with this one as well. So Douglas McGregor was like, the world is laughing at the US. The United States failed to court North Korea, and now Putin is picking up the slack. It's we're the laughing stock of the world. It's interesting takes, to be sure. Let's see here, this one.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, this is the one.
I mean, this is an account that
it goes hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Honestly, I'm not even sure if I'm not even sure if it's a parody or if it's a propaganda account or like a parody of the propaganda account when you post stuff like this. But it was very funny. So
The great cons are coming, Luddick. Are you prepared?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm fully, what do you call it? My body is ready. That's the Reggie line. I honestly, I was planning to do a sort of bit about political realism and Russian red lines, but I think we're gonna have to wait until next stream
Yeah,
to do
we'll
that.
do that, and I'll
Because,
make
yeah.
a stinger for it by that time. That's my new hyperfixation for the next week, is to make
Yeah.
like a sound cue for Vatnik Hunter.
But I mean, that's actually I can just give the user some homework and do the shilling at the same time, because I was going to respond to Morgoth's article. He's put out a new Substack that's called Red Lines, Reality, and Retards. That's really about like the concept of Russian red lines and exactly the way the West is responding to it. And you can read that on Praxarchy as well, because we published it there. So I got the shilling out of the way. I mean, I'm next stream. Hopefully, I'll be able to just go into a little bit of what I see as like the kind of red line propaganda in Russia, and how I think that a lot of what passes for geopolitical realism, especially within the dissident spheres, is really sort of, I think, is sort of more of a kind of like self-serving narrative for Russians currently, the way they're thinking about it, because I mean, none of the red lines have actually held. That's kind of the problem I have. We're going to look at it next time, but you have like this list of tens, like almost like 100 red lines that have been put out by the Russians, and all of them have been crossed, and nothing has happened. So, I mean, there's a little bit more to it. I do think of
it's quite long. The list of red lines that have been crossed.
That it's really sort of the view that Morgoth puts out, is that, you know, it's kind of the Western elites who are sort of talking away reality by kind of just using postmodern thinking, postmodern liberal thinking. But if you look at just the amount of red line warnings that Russia has put out over the last 2 years, and how none of them have held true, my view is that it's really like the geopolitical realism that's kind of been fronted as the realistic centered view is actually just a kind of Russian propaganda ploy, and they've succeeded at it, and not just been getting people to believe it in the dissident sphere, but I think in America in particular, they've kind of really gone along with that that view, and just been very slow with support. But again, I'm giving it all away. I'm going to go a little bit closer into it.
We'll have that segment next week.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're just above an hour and a half here. I'll bring up a couple of comments that, in regards to the tool talk earlier. I don't want to leave the audience hanging and blue-balled. Red Taylor, in regards to me saying that my favorite tool of all time is now a speed square, says, Lamau, how did you not have one? I don't know why I didn't have one. I don't know why it took me this long to get one. I should have gotten one years ago. That's all I have to say. Are power tools expensive up north in Norway? I mean, depends on the brand. Depends on if you're buying it like cordless or not. For my chop saw, I bought one that's technically cordless, so you can have like 2 massive batteries on it if you wanted cordless. But I mean, that's incredibly expensive. So I bought the cordless chop saw on sale, and then I bought like an adapter that lets you just make it into a corded one. So it saved me a couple of $100 on that purchase. Funny thing, Walrus, for the past month or so, I've watched lots of videos about tools. Didn't catch the tool talk early in the stream. Well, I mean, once you start, your feed on YouTube just becomes inundated. What are the must-have tools when you already have a hammer and screwdrivers? As I said, the speed square is a game changer. A good circular saw, or a skill saw, some Americans call it, which is just that handheld power saw. You can get quite far with that. I think would be the next thing to get. Or a drill, obviously. A drill is a bread and butter. If you're lucky, you can buy sets of like a drill and a driver, Driver, of course, isn't always useful when you're just doing random stuff in your home, but just having something that's smaller, a drill usually is quite much a lot wider than a driver to be able to just get in somewhere is nice. Does Ryobi exist in Europe? Yes, I've seen it. I don't buy it because I've heard it's cheap and they've had cheap feelings when I hold them. But I think in theory, for my use, it should be just fine to use Ryobi. But as I said, I have mostly DeWalt stuff because it's the ecosystem thing, and for the gardening tools, they're a bit more powerful, which is nice. I've never seen Milwaukee here, but Black and Decker is quite common. I'm not sure if Herlock. I think maybe he's from somewhere on the continent. I've never seen Milwaukee. I've seen the blue one, Makita. I've seen a lot, but that's generally a lot more expensive because the pros use that, and since I don't make money on tools, I can't afford that stuff. I've not seen Milwaukee. I get the impression that Milwaukee is also things that like pros use. There's some Hilti, but that's usually if you work for like bigger construction companies, like entrepreneurs. They'll have like Hilti contracts and stuff like that. Let's see. Scrolling. Let's see here. Some market space here. Ryobi's decent. What's the most expensive? Power tools or pizza? What are you going by? Calories or weight? Let's see here. Skillsaw is the brand name. Okay. Air compressor is nice to have because you can use it for a lot of different stuff. I mostly used air compressor. I wish I'd used my air compressor for more stuff. It's mostly just been to have a nail gun, which is nice. It's these things that are like, it saves you so much time versus doing stuff manually. It's insane. But of course, you have to make like a value judgment of how many times am I actually going to have to do this type of work. And the thing that I'm salty that I never got is one of those drivers for when you're putting up drywall. You can get a driver for the screws on drywall, which I've been doing manually for drywall when we're doing like, you can get like the tiniest, like, I think it's just 6mm drywall, and you can do like, you can put that outside on a wall that already exists if you don't want to rebuild it. So you get the drywall, but you also get the structural integrity of actually having wood, which is nice. My wife likes Makita, Bosch. Bosch is nice. A lot of people I know have Bosch. I get the feeling it's a bit more gardening tools. I'm not sure. Let's see. The Walton Milwaukee have upper level tools with the brand 2 contract. Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I say I have DeWalt, I don't have like the top of the line pro models, right? Because there's like a difference of $1,000, right? Which is annoying. All right, well, that's enough. Cool. Oh, hang on a moment. We have a super chat here for 10 Canadian dollars by Liquid Swan. He says, buy book. Essays on the Western Decline by Norman D. Wallace Swan. So that's his new book. You can check that out. I'm sure if you go on Twitter or you just Google that, you will be able to find that anywhere, or at least somewhere. If you want more Walrus content, friend of the channel, Nord Huger, just released a documentary in which he traveled to Norway. I actually met him. We sat down, had a conversation, so I'm featured in between other stuff in that documentary. You can have a look in the link that I'm posting right now. The book for Liquid Swan is on Amazon if you're interested in that. Lytic Path, anything you want to shill?
No, I already shilled the Praxarchy, but yeah, people can follow me on Twitter if they like.
Yes, follow him on Twitter. As someone said, it is like a dental floss for your brain. You can follow me on Twitter as well. More shit posting, more other stuff there than you get on Loading Path's page. Otherwise, we'll be back next week. And until then, I wish you a good night and a good weekend. Bye-bye.